Good morning, Chris. You got cabin fever yet?
No, it's not that bad for me. Good morning, Coach. Yeah, it's not as bad for me as it probably is for most. I'm used to being around the house a good bit anyway. Of course, this is normally when I'd be starting to get on the road with baseball a little bit, but I'm used to being home around during the day until the games. But I guess when you've been in a hospital for about 3 months,
yeah,
hanging around the house ain't a bad deal. So,
I'm sure you roll your eyes when you hear people complaining about being home when you were laid up in a hospital bed. What was it, Chris? 90-something days.
Yeah, it's different. It's different perspective, and the truth is, I was getting tired. I enjoyed so much having a chance to. I was so grateful and enjoyed being back doing games, but I was starting to get a little tired. I'm not going to kid you. So I needed a little bit of a break. I didn't want this much. But I'm sick for everybody that it really, players and coaches, those are the ones that I feel the most, not to mention the others whose livelihoods are tied with this. And I'm just talking about from the sports standpoint. I know it's our whole world, but just from the sports angle of it, it's heartbreaking to put what you put into to get ready for a season. And to have one, I'll just use baseball as the example, but to have it go at a historic level, one of the best starts in the history of the program, and Brad and that staff have worked so hard to get things turned around. You're just absolutely sick for them to have it end in that manner and so abruptly.
Yeah, Dad.
I think we ought to start with baseball, not necessarily every player on the team, but I think we already know what basketball did and the injuries they had. But baseball certainly has moved from a hard work in progress to try to make that program competitive, just enough to be good enough to get to the SEC tournament in Birmingham would be a plus.
Right.
Talk to our listeners about baseball, because we don't talk about that enough.
Well, that's as good as the Southeastern Conference is in everything, and y'all know it as well as anybody, or better than most. It is terrific in every single sport, but in my opinion, the toughest sport is baseball. Everybody is good, and it is an absolute meat grinder week in, week out once you get into SEC play. And that's the thing. They were sitting there at, I guess, 16-1 maybe when the season was called and you're getting ready for your conference opener with Missouri. And it's not one where you look at it and go, okay, well, there's 3 wins. Even as good as you've been, you can't take it for granted with this league. I mean, it's still a case where as tough as, or as well as Alabama had played, you're sitting there and you go, man, if we could find a way to win 13, 14 ball games, we'll probably get to Hoover. Well, you're playing 30 in the conference. That means you've lost, as many as 17 if you only got 13 wins. So that's the reality of it. And, I used this back when it was going on. Alabama was at 10-0 or 11-0, something like that to start the year. I said, one of only about a half dozen teams or more in the country that were in that spot at that time to have that record. I said undefeated. And there were 10 SEC teams ranked at the time, and Alabama was not one of them. That's what the SEC is. And that's the reality of it. Now, do I think this team was going to be good enough, had the talent and the confidence to probably be a team that was at 15 or maybe a little bit north of that? Probably so. But you just never know. This is where you get into the part of can you stay healthy? Do you have your bad weekends, and everybody's got them? Do you have your off day at the wrong time? Another part of it that I think is a real challenge when you're talking about college baseball, and in particular you're talking about the SEC, is the fact that you've got to find a way to be at your best every stinking weekend. And by the way, you're going to play on Tuesday and Wednesday too, and they're going to be coming after you, and it's probably going to be an in-state team, and they're good. Sanford, UAB, I can go through the list. There's, they're all good, and they're all gunning for you because you're Alabama. So there's literally not an off night in the 50-plus games that you play over the course of the year, or would have played had you gotten through all of them.
We're talking, obviously, with Chris Stewart. Everybody knows that voice. Chris, what's right for the spring sports? I talked to an athletic director 2 days ago, and he thought they may give the seniors the option to come back, but everybody else has to bump up. So if you're a freshman, you got to be a sophomore, junior, senior.
Yeah.
That way, it would only backload it 1 year. And a lot of these guys may choose not to come back. The financial part of, especially here at Alabama, they're not getting a ton of scholarship money to have to pay it again if they've already graduated.
Right.
These guys personally, like we just know the names. You know them, and you hate for their senior year to kind of end that way. What's right with these spring sports, in Chris Stewart's opinion?
I'm not smart enough to give you what's right, and it happened so quick. I tell you what I think will happen. I think they'll let the seniors for the spring sports have the additional year. Now, does that mean that you don't count them on your scholarship limit or your total roster limit? I don't know. I just don't know how they're going to, and I don't think the people that are going to make that decision have a clue yet. And that's not a criticism. It's just something that's caught everybody. It's unprecedented. We've never had this before, and you're trying to do what's right. You're trying to do what's fair, but you're also trying to figure out bottom line for everybody, and everybody's not the same at Division I even, especially when you're talking baseball.
Right.
When you say that the baseball is fully funded in the SEC, you're saying, all right, everybody's getting 11.7. But as you've already talked about, if you've got these lottery scholarships or other type scholarships that you're legally allowed to use, it takes that number above 11.7. You're talking about a whole lot more than that. But also, all over the country, especially smaller conferences, they're not given a full 11.7 in baseball. There's a bunch of them out there that ain't given but 4 or 5 scholarships. So what are they going to do? How does it work for them? How does it look for them? And that's a tough, I really feel for the administrators who are going to have to make this math work, and it was already a tough go. But they're trying to figure out how to make it work. Most importantly, I feel for a guy like a Brett Auerbach, who came to Alabama as a junior college guy from California, who last year struggled early, got better and better as the season wore on, and was playing pretty good at the end of the year, and then this season picked up right where he left off, was playing incredibly well, and now it shuts down. So he was he was a guy that was going to get drafted, in my opinion, and I may be wrong. Brad and somebody on the staff could be listening right now and go, boy, you're off base on what you're about to say, Chris. But I think he was going to be drafted, somewhere in the top 10, 15 rounds, and was going to have a chance to go play ball somewhere and really further his career because of the success he was having. But is he going to be drafted as high as he might have been because they didn't get to see him against SEC play for 30 games? That's quite a barometer, because if you can go through the SEC, you can play anywhere, and that was going to be a real gauge for him, and he was really going to have a chance to move up as far as the draft was concerned and all that. But now, what's going to happen with the draft? When they're going to have it? What's it going to look like? Hey, there is so much to be decided. It is an absolute mess. It's nobody's fault, but it's the reality of where we are.
Yep, Dad.
The Hope Scholarship, does that make it even broader? Does that make the the guys, the teams that are not very good have a terrible time catching up. Hope scholarship for the teams that have it is good. For the teams that don't have it, not real good.
I'll just ask you, when you were coaching, if you were sitting there with 7 guys on scholarship and LSU had 15.
Yeah.
How, night in, night out, how good would you have been?
Yeah, that's the point I'm making. Yeah, that's
exactly.
the point I'm making.
And that's reality. And again, it's not complaining, it's not whining, it's not saying that the others are doing wrong. They're within the rules. That's what's so jacked up about it, is that it's not a level playing field. If you're a kid in Louisiana,
they look at everything else, Chris, and give all their opinions. Have they never looked at this and tried to get this straight? Well,
they do, but I don't know how much they care because it doesn't impact their bottom line.
Okay.
You want the truth? That's my opinion. I may be wrong, but that's my gut reaction. I think that's part of what Ron Polk, the guy who's a legend at Mississippi State. He's been an assistant for a number of years at the UAB now, but was one of the most successful head coaches in college baseball for years, and and beat the drum forever. Still does on behalf of college baseball and what he thinks is right for the game itself. And it's a tough deal when you're sitting there with and I understand why. You're sitting there as an athletic department and you've got to make the math work. And with Title IX, it's got to be equitable for women's athletics the same as it is on the men's side. And when you've got that 85 scholarship monster that you have in football, you're having to play catch up on the women's side with scholarship numbers, and it's going to hurt in other places. And baseball is a glaring example of that in the men's side of the ledger. But it's awfully tough. And then when they allow the lottery scholarships and the others that are involved, and you've got Vanderbilt, who may have 30 kids on scholarship legally, but 30 kids on scholarship, and you're Brad Bohannon, and you're sitting there with the additional scholarship money. You may have 15, I don't know what the number is right now, but you may have 15 full scholarships to work with, or 15 period that are on scholarship. It is not an easy deal. No, by the way, that's if everybody stays healthy. It's a tough grind. You start getting 1 or 2 guys hurt that are on a pretty good percentage of a scholarship, then it's a different animal entirely.
We're talking with Chris Stewart. Chris, today is 1 year ago they hired Nate Oats. And so, and I looked at, I think you probably had Godfried, you did Grant, you did Avery, and you'd been with Coach Oates. And Dad and I talked about this in the last segment. It takes sometimes a year to even learn a job. Hey, how do I use football for recruiting? Where do I recruit? Who in the athletic department will really help me with basketball? Just talk about Coach Oates' first year, and then I'm sure he's learned a ton just from being here, coming from Buffalo, especially not being from this area, about this particular job.
I think he has. I am so excited about him, and I'll tell you, he is Coach, he reminds me of you from the standpoint that, and I mean this complimentary, and I hope it comes across this way. I always felt like you were a high school coach at heart. Okay, you love the things that high school coaches have to love in order to stay in the game as long as they do, at the level they do. And I say that respectfully. My brother was a high school, coach for various sports for about 25 years. So it's said with respect when I say that. I think at heart he is still that guy, but I think he handles all the things so incredibly well that you have to handle at this level that come with it beyond just basketball. And I think it's just his personality that allows him to handle the media, that allows him to handle dealing with boosters and things of that nature. That's just who he is. He's a Yankee. That also is said with respect and affection, because he says what's on his mind with very little filter.
Well, Dad's a Southerner, and he does that too, Chris.
Yeah, but he was from North Alabama.
Oh, that's right.
He's a UNA. So, that part's different too. But, that is another similarity. He's going to tell you what he thinks. You may not like it, but you're going to get the truth. And I think that's something that among the things that I really enjoyed in the time this season that I spent with. I learned what I need to know about Nate Oats before I ever saw him coach a game. He showed up, and I'd been around the guy 7, 8, 9 times max when he got in the job. Never for very long, but I'd been around him just a few times. And he shows up at the hospital with Kyra and Herb to visit me when they came into Birmingham for the SEC media event, and they came and spent a half hour with me. That time of year, they ain't got a ton of free time. But when they came to see me and spend time, I knew everything I needed to know about him personally.
Yeah.
From that gesture. But from a basketball standpoint, getting to see him this year, I know the record was not what we wanted. I know it's definitely not what he wanted. But I will be absolutely stunned if we're sitting here 12 months looking at the same results and same circumstances and having same conversation of what went wrong. I think it's going to be, I can't tell you what the roster is going to look like, but I can tell you this, it's going to be a result that is much closer to what we're going to see year in and year out than what we had this year.
Well, Chris, we appreciate you taking time this morning to be on with us. You know how much we think about you, and glad you're feeling better and getting him to enjoy your family and go out there and shoot your son in some horse. I saw he going to be a sophomore there in basketball. Who wins when y'all play horse? He's
got me right now, but that's because I still ain't got the strength back in my arm. But he knows that's coming.
We'll go get him, Chris.
He knows it's coming. Y'all, I'm glad to do it. Y'all been so good to me, and I appreciate you both so much. So I'm glad to be on with you anytime. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.